I think that Chandrachud has done a great disservice to the constitution and to this country.
I want to get you to repeat that. Justice Chandrachud has done a great disservice to the constitution and to the people of this country. You seriously mean that?
I not only mean that, but I feel that if Supreme Court, and it has been held by Supreme Court time and again, is bound by its own judgments, day in and day out, this Supreme Court will haul up citizens, bureaucrats and politicians for contempt of its orders. What has Chandrachud done? Is he not guilty of, he and his colleagues are not guilty of defying Supreme Court's judgment? He and his colleagues, are they not responsible for breaking down of the rule of law? I have no doubt that Chief Justice Chandrachud was playing in the hands of somebody when he made this. He is far too intelligent not to have realized the letter and spirit of the law. He is far too intelligent to have forgotten what he himself held in Ram Janmabhoomi case.
A moment ago you said of Justice Chandrachud that this is not just the most damaging thing he said and done, but it was deliberate, and then you added, I have no doubt, he's playing in the hands of somebody. In whose hands is he playing? Who's, in a sense, manipulating him?
Whoever is interested in this exercise, who are the forces who are wanting this exercise to be carried on.
You mean Modi and the BJP?
Destabilize the country and suppress and oppress the minority community. This is not isolated. Let's understand one thing.
Can I interrupt? Can I interrupt? This is a very serious charge you're making. You're suggesting that as a justice and later as a chief justice, he was being influenced by political considerations, and those in particular of the ruling BJP.
No doubt about it. There is no doubt about it, and he proved it by his aarti with the Prime Minister. He proved it again by saying that Ayodhya judgment, I got divine wisdom from Almighty. I can tell you one thing. I can tell you one thing. I have sleepless nights thinking about it. My wife tells me every day, why are you getting so involved? But I am involved because I am worried about my country. I am worried about my lovely. You don't know how much it is impacting me. Just imagine how much it must be affecting those belonging to the minority community. It's really sad what is happening, and I don't know why nobody in this country wants to stand up and fight this kind of nonsense.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Suddenly it seems as if we're regularly discovering mosques which people claim have been built on older Hindu temples, and courts are being petitioned to permit surveys to investigate them. It began with the Gyanvapi Mosque in Varanasi, the Shahi Eidgah in Mathura, and the Kamal Mola in Dhar. But it's now happened in the case of the Shahi Jama Masjid in Sambhal and the Ajmer Sharif Dargah in Ajmer. This is clearly playing with fire because it could lead to communal tension. Indeed, it's already led to violence. My guest today blames it squarely on a ruling by Justice Chandrachud in May 2022. Joining me to explain why he holds that view is one of India's foremost and most highly regarded lawyers and a former president of the Supreme Court Bar Association, Dushyant Dave. Dushyant Dave, increasingly it seems the courts are being petitioned to permit surveys to see if mosques, which are often several centuries old, are built on older Hindu temples. As I said in the introduction, most recently it's happened in Sambhal and Ajmer, but earlier it happened in Varanasi, Mathura and Dhar in Madhya Pradesh. This is tantamount to playing with fire. But you believe a May 2022 ruling by Justice Chandrachud is responsible for landing us in this messy situation. Can you start by explaining why you blame him, why you think Justice Chandrachud is responsible?
Look, this is an extraordinarily serious situation which is developing in the country. And something which was clearly prohibited by the Religious Places Worship Act of 1991. Now, the Constitution Bench of the Supreme Court, to which Justice Chandrachud was party in Ayodhya Ram Janmabhoomi case, expressly said that there are two basic norms of this act. One, that it seeks to protect every religious place of worship as it existed on 15th of August 1947, and that they are therefore untouchable unless they are exempted expressly under the statute. Secondly, they said something more important. They interpreted Section 4, subsection 2 of that act to say that no fresh suit, appeal, or proceeding can lie to change the character of any place of worship as it existed on 15th of August 1947. As we all know, that act had expressly exempted by Section 5 the Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid, so that because the suits and litigations were pending prior to 1947. Now, that law, the Supreme Court said, and this is, I must quote, Supreme Court said that this act protects and secures the fundamental values of the Constitution. It said the law addresses to the state as much as to every citizen of the nation. It said this law is non-derogable obligation of the state to enforce secularism. It also said that act is an affirmation of solemn duty which was cast upon the state to preserve and protect equality of all faiths as an essential constitutional value because it is the basic feature of the Constitution. And it also said that the historical wrongs cannot be corrected by people taking law into their own hands, and that to suppress or oppress people and their future. Now, these are the words of the Supreme Court to which Chandrachud was a party. He is bound by these words. The act, therefore, the interpretation which was given to the act, to my mind, clearly, commanded that everybody must now stay their hands off after the Ram Janmabhoomi judgment of the Supreme Court. It doesn't stop here. Interestingly, Justice Sharma of the Allahabad High Court, who had delivered the Ram Janmabhoomi judgment, he had made an observation in his judgment that this act does not prohibit fresh proceedings or fresh suits that may lie in respect of other places of worship. This particular finding was squashed by the Constitution Bench, saying that this is completely wrong, it is erroneous, and it is in teeth of Section 4, subsection 2, which says no suit or proceeding can lie in future for any new place of worship. Now, if this is the law of the land, by virtue of Article 141, this is the law of the land. And by virtue of that article, everybody, the executive, the legislature, and even the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, is bound by that law. So I find it extraordinarily shocking that when it came to Gyanvapi Mosque, when an application was moved for dismissal of the suit which was filed on behalf of the minority community, which was rejected by the trial court and high court, Justice Chandrachud doesn't go into it because application was that this suit is not maintainable per se. And Justice Chandrachud allowed the proceedings to go on, allowed the ASI proceedings to go on. It was really, I would say, most shocking defiance of his own judgment by Justice Chandrachud. Now that has opened a Pandora's box. Had he said that day that nothing doing, no more such proceedings can lie, which is the law, no more proceedings will be entertained, and we hereby command that no court in India shall entertain such proceedings, then Chandrachud would have done a great service to this nation. But clearly he was not willing to do that because he was playing in the hands of the politicians for oblique reasons. And that's what really shocks me, that a man who otherwise claims to be a larger than life image across the globe goes on giving lecture on secularism, on rule of law. He is now party to complete breakdown of rule of law in this country.
Let me, for the sake of the audience, clarify precisely what it is that Justice Chandrachud said in May 2022, which you believe has opened a Pandora's box. I believe his words were, the ascertainment of the religious character of the place of worship is not expressly barred. He claimed that what is barred is changing the character of a place of worship after 15th August 1947. That is barred, but ascertaining what the character is, he claimed was not barred. Very quickly, am I right in saying that it was this so-called interpretation that he gave the act that has opened the Pandora's box?
It is unfortunate that he gave that interpretation. Being quite intelligent and claiming himself to be an intellectual, he should be the last person to interpret like that. Because if you cannot change the place, a character of a place, what's the point of ascertaining what the character is? Therefore, there was a complete prohibition, complete status quo in respect of all places of religious worship. Now, these are semantics. I'm sure Justice Chandrachud knew what is the purport of the act. Ultimately, the idea was to bring peace and prosperity and communal harmony in this country.
Absolutely.
And therefore, he could not have made this kind of a, I would say, stretched interpretation, and which was clearly not borne out on the face of it by the language of the act as interpreted by Justice Chandrachud and his four colleagues who have all now benefited from the government who decided the Ayodhya judgment.
Let me put it like this to you. Even if the interpretation that Justice Chandrachud came up with, and I'll repeat it, that although you cannot change the character of a religious place after 15th August 1947, you can ascertain and determine what that character is. Even if that doesn't strictly breach the letter of the Places of Worship Act, doesn't it undermine the spirit of that act? Very seriously and comprehensively undermine the spirit of the act.
No, I would go to the extent of saying that it really is in teeth of the letter of the act. It also is violative of the spirit of the act, because the act is enacted to prohibit conversion of any place of worship as it existed on 15th August 1947. Now, if there is a prohibition, where is the question of ascertaining the character? Are you doing an academic exercise as Supreme Court in a most sensitive, communally sensitive issue? Now, is judiciary not responsible for the deaths of these four innocent people in Sambal? What are we are discussing here? People are losing their lives. The two communities are being divided permanently. And, these wounds are virtually impossible to heal, especially when the Bharatiya Janata Party is in power in these states where this is happening, be it Rajasthan or Uttar Pradesh. So I think that Chandrachud has done a great disservice to the constitution and to this country.
I want to get you to repeat that. Justice Chandrachud has done a great disservice to the constitution and to the people of this country. You seriously mean that?
I not only mean that, but I feel that if Supreme Court, and it has been held by Supreme Court time and again, is bound by its own judgments, day in and day out, this Supreme Court will haul up citizens, bureaucrats and politicians for contempt of its orders. What has Chandrachud done? Is he not guilty of, he and his colleagues are not guilty of defying Supreme Court's judgment? He and his colleagues, are they not responsible for breaking down of the rule of law? Because they have noted in that judgment that the demolition of the mosque in 1992 was the most egregious act on the part of, these in connivance with the state, especially after giving undertaking to the Supreme Court by the Bharatiya Janata Party Chief Minister, Mr. Kalyan Singh. And he said this was the absolute breakdown of rule of law. Judges say that expressly. Now, he was a party to it. How can therefore he allow this, thing to go on?
So he is guilty of contempt of court himself.
Look, nobody has ever tested this proposition whether judges can be guilty of, their own judgment in contempt. But certainly he is guilty of defying and defiling his own judgment.
Some people who agree with Justice Chandrachud's interpretation say that it is a clever and ingenious interpretation of the law. But don't you think the opposite is in fact more true? That Justice Chandrachud should have known that this is a volatile and deeply sensitive topic in India, and as a result, the lives of ordinary people and the communal harmony of the nation would be at stake. And that second, more important concern, he just seems to have ignored.
No, Justice Chandrachud's interpretation is not only, it's intellectually dishonest. But what is important is that Justice Chandrachud misses the point that the Act prohibits a citizen from initiating any action. And by virtue of Article 51A, every citizen has certain fundamental duties, including to uphold the constitutional values. The Act is a prohibition against the state, saying that you will ensure that this Act is implemented in letter and spirit. Let me ask you one thing, Karan. Why is it that the judges don't have, the same Justice Chandrachud didn't have the courage to set down the matters challenging the constitutional validity of this Act for hearing? Because he knows that it will be upheld, and it was upheld, to my mind, in Ayodhya judgment. Indirectly, the direct challenge didn't come. But so, first and foremost, they keep these challenges away, and then they start, going around it in this convoluted interpretation. Secondly, did Justice Chandrachud should have asked the government, especially the Bharatiya Janata Party at the center, that why don't you bring the law to remove and repeal this Act of 1991? These are things that judges should be mindful. After all, that was an act of parliament. And the act of parliament, you take a constitutional oath that I will uphold the constitution and the laws. Once you have taken that oath, you must make sure that that oath is, followed and respected in every possible way in upholding the constitution and the laws. And Justice Chandrachud and his colleagues, look, he alone is not responsible. His colleagues who are still sitting in the Honorable Supreme Court, they are equally responsible for not pointing out to the Chief Justice that we differ from you and we don't want to be party to this. Mr. Huzef Ahmadi, let me tell you, Mr. Huzef Ahmadi, a respected senior advocate who is valiantly defending the minority community in all these cases, he has been trying hard to tell the Supreme Court that nobody can now try and change the character of these places of worship. Please, therefore, give a declaration to me. Do not interfere in Gyanvapi. Do not Luckily, in Mathura, when matter came before the Supreme Court, I must say hats off to Justice Khanna, who stayed the proceedings, as he did yesterday, in respect of Sambal. So, there are judges. It shows that there is a cleavage in the Supreme Court. And therefore, Justice Chandrachud and his colleagues who really were party to the Gyanvapi orders stand exposed with great respect to these judges. See, I respect them, I admire them, but they don't have the courage to stand up and tell Chief Justice that, Chief Justice, we don't agree with this and we distance ourselves from this. They just go with him.
Dushyant Dave, in the last couple of weeks, we've discussed Justice Chandrachud many times. 3, possibly 4 times in the last 2 months, for sure. Are you beginning to worry that this comment of his of May 2022 that we're discussing could be the most damaging thing he's said and done?
Look, not only damaging, but deliberate. I have no doubt that Chief Justice Chandrachud was playing in the hands of somebody when he made this. He is far too intelligent not to have realized the letter and spirit of the law. He is far too intelligent to have forgotten what he himself held in Ram Janmabhoomi case. And, and he has given many bhashans on secularism in other judgments. So, here is a man a judge who knows everything, and yet he makes these observations. It really, forget him. I am not, now Chandrachud is a passe, and I am sure he will be forgotten soon. Issue is not that. Issue is that judiciary across the country is responsible for defying the law made by the parliament as interpreted by the Supreme Court. And that is a sad commentary. Judges at the lowest level are bound. I'll tell you, there is a very interesting judgment of Supreme Court by Justice Chinnappa Reddy in Assistant Collector of Customs versus Dunlop India Limited, where Justice Chinnappa Reddy almost, in a very sad, words, says that everybody in this country is bound by the law declared by the Supreme Court. everybody, including the executive and the judiciary. And he says, I mean, we have been reminding them again and again that please follow our judgments. And we find it with great difficulty that they don't follow. So now that was in 1985. Yet we are finding that judges have little respect for the law or for the judgment of the Supreme Court at lower levels, be it in Sambal, be it in Varanasi, be it in Mathura, be it in Ajmer.
A moment ago, you said of Justice Chandrachud that this is not just the most damaging thing he said and done, but it was deliberate. And then you added, I have no doubt, he's playing in the hands of somebody. In whose hands is he playing? Who's, in a sense, manipulating him?
Listen, we all know what is the, I must say one thing. And that's where I respect Mr. Bhagwat of the RSS, although I do not, agree to their ideology. But he himself said that you can't go on doing this because you will find under, in every mosque, maybe a shivling. But we have to put an end to it. Now, here is a man who is a grassroots man who knows the consequences of this exercise which is being carried on with the blessings of judiciary and willingly implemented by the executive.
But in whose?
The moment
But in whose hands is Justice Chandrachud playing? Those were your words. He's playing in the hands of somebody. Who or what are you alluding to?
Whoever is interested in this exercise, who are the forces who are wanting this exercise to be carried on.
You mean Modi and the BJP?
Destabilize the country and suppress and oppress the minority community. This is not isolated. Let's understand one thing.
Can I interrupt? Can I interrupt? This is a very serious charge you're making. You're suggesting that as a justice and later as a chief justice, he was being influenced by political considerations and those in particular of the ruling BJP.
No doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. And he proved it by, his aarti with the Prime Minister. He proved it again by saying that Ayodhya judgment, I got divine, wisdom from Almighty. I mean, here is the Chief Justice. How can he do all these things? But be that as it may, Karan, what is really today happening in the countries? And this is where I think there is a serious introspection required by the Bharatiya Janata Party, the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi. Love jihad, land jihad, all these, mob lynching, all these, instruments of, oppression are being carried on with clear impunity and support from the states, especially in BJP states. I'll give you an example. In Baroda recently, a young man whose father is a BJP Karyakarta was murdered, apparently, allegedly by a Muslim boy. Now, Muslim boy should be, tried, prosecuted, and he should be given a sentence as law. What they do is they go into the old part of Baroda, Mandvi and other areas, and, try and remove every Muslim hawker who have been working, hawking there for maybe 100 years. And, all the shops which are of the Muslims with slightest, butting out, they demolish them. And they create an atmosphere of fear, the police, the municipal authorities. Now, this kind of an atmosphere today, you are trying to create a fear. And that fear, remember one thing, Karan, these are not my words. Ambedkar said during Constituent Assembly debate that minorities are an explosive force. And if they explode, it will destroy the very fabric of this nation.
Absolutely.
We don't want that situation. Look, whatever.
Are you worried, therefore, that we could soon be approaching a time when hundreds, maybe even thousands of mosques will be surveyed in the belief that they were built on Hindu temples purely on the grounds of tradition or anecdotal history, that claim is the case? In other words, are you worried that this is going to proliferate and this Pandora's box or a can of worms that's been opened will lead to multiple cases? Hundreds, not thousands.
I am not only worried, but I call upon these people who are now wanting to obliterate the Islamic history of this country. Why don't you begin with Red Fort? Why don't you go to Taj? Why don't you go to Qutub Minar? Start digging under them. Let us demolish all these thousands of monuments which are great heritage of this country. so that now we obliterate any sign of Islamic invaders from this country. Where are we going to end? We don't need it. Look, this is an amazing nation. Hinduism is an amazing religion. I am a proud Hindu. I am a Brahmin. I worship every day my lords. But I also pay my obeisance to other gods and other religious leaders. You cannot allow this thing to go on. I have no doubt that if this exercise is not stemmed now, it is going to really set this country on fire. And people are, unfortunately, as I said, that the Bharatiya Janata Party does not have courage to repeal the law, because they know that in parliament they will not get support from their own allies. Now, therefore, what they want to do is, what they can't do directly, they are perpetuating it indirectly.
In which case, let me ask you this. As you said, Justice Chandrachud has opened up Pandora's box and he's laid the grounds for mischief, and that mischief is already happening in front of our eyes. What do we need to do to rein in the situation and ensure that matters don't completely slip out of control?
Well, first and foremost, I think the nation would be happy to note that under the leadership of Chief Justice Khanna, a new Supreme Court is being born. And that Supreme Court is now distancing itself away from the period that ensued from 2014 to 2024. Here is a Chief Justice who is balanced, who is sober, who respects Constitution in letter and spirit and the laws. And here is a Supreme Court where large number of his colleagues are willing to do that thing. They all value Constitution.
But Dushyant Dave, he only has 7 months in the chair. Is that long enough to reverse?
So we have many good judges now in the Supreme Court, and many good Chief Justices coming hereafter. I have no doubt that those Chief Justices will really ensure that the majesty of laws will prevail. So, Karan, I am reminded today what is happening is that, and these are the words of Sardar Patel. Sardar Patel was heading the minority committee during the constitution framing. It was he who gave the provisions for protection of the minority. And he said that, look, if the Hindus stop discriminating against the minorities will have no reason to complain, and minorities will vanish. There'll be one country, complete equality. And he also said that put yourself in the shoes of the minority community and feel the pain that they feel at the way we behave, the majority. Then you will realize that it is wrong. So here are, great people, Sardar Patel, Ambedkar, who are otherwise icons of Prime Minister Mr. Modi. But he does not want to follow them in these regards. He just wants to create statute and garland them on their birthdays and their anniversaries.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Let me quote from Manu Sebastian, the managing editor of Live Law. He says, and I'm quoting him, the Supreme Court ought to give a conclusive pronouncement that the Places of Worship Act cannot be circumvented under the guise of determining religious character. Do you agree with him that we need a conclusive pronouncement from the Supreme Court?
I completely agree. And I must say, although yesterday's Justice Khanna's intervention, Justice Khanna and Justice Sanjay Kumar's was welcome, but I think they fell short. They should have, withdrawn that suit to the Supreme Court and, declared that suit was not maintainable. They should have given a general direction. I'll tell you, I think it was a Reliance public issue or Morgan Stanley public issue many years ago. And large number of cases where suits were being filed against the public issue which was coming up. I think it was Reliance. And the Supreme Court passed a general mandamus restraining every court in the country from filing such cases. Now that is what is required. Judges need to be innovative. They have to think out of the box. They have to
But just a moment. Now you're criticizing Justice Khanna for not going far enough.
No, I'm not
a moment
criticizing.
ago,
No,
you were saying he could be the savior.
No, then you don't hear me properly. I said I welcome what he did, but he fell short. That's not criticizing. Sorry, that's your interpretation. But I do feel I would have been much happier had the Supreme Court, gone whole hog yesterday and stopped all this nonsense. Because, look, as a poet very beautifully says in these lines, ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे जहां में नफरत क्यों है, जंग है क्यों, तेरा दिल तो इतना बड़ा है, इंसान का दिल तंग है क्यों. Today, unfortunately, we are creating a divide. You come to Gujarat, Karan, it brings tears in my eyes that the two communities are polarized beyond repair. The Muslims cannot live side by side with Hindus in any area, nor can Hindus live side by side with Muslims in any area virtually. Okay. So you are creating two areas, and in Ahmedabad, the area which is predominantly dominated by the minority community, Juhapura, large number of my friends in Ahmedabad call it Pakistan. Now, is this what our freedom fighters fought for freedom? They all laid their lives. Thousands of Indians laid their lives to gain us the freedom. Partition has happened. Those Muslims who wanted to go to Pakistan have gone. But those who decided to stay back have placed their future in the hands of us, the majority. It is for us now to ensure that we make them feel welcome. After 77 years, are we going to now talk about what happened 600-700 years ago? If there was Babur and Aurangzeb, there was also Akbar, who treated everybody. I mean, take for example, Govardhan Parvat. I remember this story which Supreme Court has quoted, where, the Srinathji Bhagwan's deity was there. He exempted Govardhan. He first gave their, right to that land to, I forget the name, Mahaprabhuji. And then he exempted from tax.
Absolutely.
So you can't just, ye gade murdo ko ukhadna. It is really not good for us. Thousands of, let me tell you one thing, in fairness to the minority community, and this is what the nation must hear, they have still kept their faith in us and the Constitution. Thousands of suicide bombings have taken place in Islamic world, including Pakistan. There has been only one suicide bombing in India, Pulwama. Now, just imagine, we don't want this kind of a situation to go beyond. We have a lot of work to do. We have to, take care of 140 crore people. We need to create job. We need to uplift the poor from poverty. We need education. We need good health. We need peace. We need harmony. We need prosperity. All this vanished will, Karan, I can tell you one thing. I can tell you one thing. I have sleepless nights thinking about it. My wife tells me every day, why are you getting so involved? But I am involved because I am worried about my country. I am worried about my lovely. You don't know how much it is impacting me. Just imagine how much it must be affecting those belonging to the minority community. It's really sad what is happening, and I don't know why nobody in this country wants to stand up and fight this kind of nonsense.
Dushyant Dave, I thank you for this very, very powerful interview. The emotion in your voice, the tears in your eyes speak volumes.
Sorry.
Also, thank you. No, don't apologize. It was your heart that was speaking. Your heart will reach out to the audience. Your heart will make a point that goes well beyond your passion and your anger. But I want to repeat for the audience some of the important things you said about Justice Chandrachud. You said he was guilty of defying and breaching his own judgment in 2019. You accused him of intellectual dishonesty. You said he has played in the hands of somebody, making it clear that somebody is the BJP and the government. And his ruling of May 2022, you said, could set this country on fire. For your honesty,
I haven't said that BJP and government he played in hands. I have said he played in hands of somebody. I don't know who.
thank you very much for your words, for your passion, for your emotion. Take care. Stay safe.
Let us pray that ultimately wisdom prevails on those in power, those in judiciary, and the citizens, and we can all put an end to this. We don't want to become another Pakistan or Bangladesh. We want this India to be Bharat, a nation which has really nurtured long heritage culture of religious tolerance, produced some of the finest religions like Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and we welcomed Zoroastrianism. So we should not be worried about these kind of issues.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Stay safe.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.